Hello there. Okay, we are going to do some hand lettering. So the way that my process works is that I draw everything on the page first, and then I go through and I hand letter everything before I ink. So how does one hand letter? Like, most people don't do this anymore. It's kind of not that much of a thing, but I like to do it just because I'm weird, and also I like the fact that my pages end up complete artifacts. So need a couple of specialty tools, which are actually really not that hard to find. So I'm going to use my right angle triangle, which obviously I've had for a million years because it's kind of gross. And I'm going to use my Ames lettering guide, which these you can usually find in the drafting section of any of your art supply stores. So on the very bottom of the Ames lettering guide, you have itsy bitsy little numbers, and for comics lettering, you usually want to set it around at a 4. You can turn the little wheel to set it to different numbers. And I want it on 4. That'll give me nice even spaces. It looks very intimidating, but don't worry, you're not even going to use most of this stuff. Just, it's not a problem. Don't worry about it. So what you do is you take your right triangle. I've already mapped out where my speech balloons are going to be. I actually figure those out in working with my script while I'm laying the page out, like while I'm figuring out what is going to be on this page. That's one of the very first things that I do so that I know I have room for everything. Not that it always 100% works out, but you have to at least try to plan for it. So I'm going to take my right triangle, I'm going to line it up with one of my panel borders, which are, I mean, as accurate for 90 degrees as anything on this page is going to be. I'm going to move this up into position. My first word balloon is right here. It's penciled in very lightly, so you might have a hard time seeing it, but right here I have to have some words. So I'm going to scoot this up because the only row of these dots that I'm going to use is this bottom row right here. And with it set on a 4, then these are at an angle so that if you use the right ones, you get nice evenly spaced lines to make your letters on. Alright, so this is going to be the very top. You stick your pencil in the very first hole, and you just slide this back and forth very gently, and now I've got a little guideline there. Then you go down one hole, and you slide back and forth again. You'll notice that's a very tiny skinny line. That is going to be one of my spaces. So it's kind of like your header space. Then there is another little hole here, but you'll notice it's very close to that one. I'm going to skip it. There's a little actually loop connecting this to the second one away from it and skipping over this one. So I'm actually going to follow that loop and make another line. You see that's a much bigger space. That's where my letters are going to go. I'm going to repeat that again. Little space, big space, little space, big space. Keeping with those loops to skip the little half steps. Those little half steps are in case you wanted a secondary guideline to do like capital and lowercase letters. So you have a good guide for where those lowercase letters are supposed to hit, but I'm doing everything in capital letters, so I don't need them. All right, so for this word balloon, 3 lines, which is what you get when you go through the whole thing. 3 lines should be plenty, so I'm good on that one. Now that I've knocked those lines in, I'm going to, in pencil again, just quickly write in what is supposed to be in this word balloon. I'm going to try to make this spaced evenly to make sure that all of my lines, if they don't come out exactly the same, they have like a nice flow to them where it's little, long, little. You'll see what I mean. So the line is a dash, it's just you. So a dash, it's just you. And it's a little off center. I'm going to want to scoot those over a little bit. So this is why we figure this part out in pencil, because then I can go, oh, that line is a little off center. I'm going to scoot it over and put it more here. So now I know that that is going to fit the way that I want it to when I go in and ink it. I'm actually going to go ahead and do all of these in pencil and then do them all in ink after I've figured out where everything goes. So once again, I'm going to line up with one of my panel borders so that I know all of the text is at least in right angles to the panel borders. So even if my panel borders are not 100% perfect, everything is at least consistent within itself. All right, now I've got 3 word balloons here. So we start at the very top, go down 1, slide, skip down, slide, go down 1, slide, skip down, slide, go down 1, skip down 1. Now, I'm going to need more of these, and I want them to all kind of keep the same spacing because I'm not sure if I'm going to end up with 3 lines here or 4 or 2 or what I'm going to have to do. I might have to scooch some of the text around in these guesstimates that I have of these word balloons. So in order to continue the lines that I had started here, now I'm going to scoot down, again making sure that I stay lined up with my panel border. I'm going to scoot down, oh, I went too far, and I want to line up that little top dot right there that I used to start. I'm going to line that up with the last pencil line that I drew. So now I have that. If I put my pencil back in there, I'm tracing over that exact same line that I already have. And now I'm just going to continue because that gives us our first space. And then our next letter line, space, letters, space, letters. And see, now we have a consistent pattern here. I have the same space between that line and that line, even though I've started over on a whole new set. It's really easy to screw that up, by the way. Don't feel bad if you do. I've done it many, many times. And the next word balloon is going to be 3 lines again, I think, because we have the line that, oh, okay. Sometimes, like, the instant you start doing it, you realize that your plan is not going to work, because that would have put this word balloon, like, right on top of his face, which we don't want to do. We're going to scoot this over a little bit, because if we cover part of this hand gesture, it's a lot less critical. I mean, I want it there, but it's less critical than if I cover a character's face, which I definitely don't want to do. So I will touch on real quickly that in graphic design in general, they tell you never want widows and orphans, which are words alone on their own lines. But realistically, in comics, a lot of time, what are you gonna do? The line is 3 words, and the middle word is twice the length of the next longest word. So while, yeah, you don't want a giant block of text that's like 4 words long and then 1 word hanging off by itself, obviously you want to even that out as much as possible. It's really not a hard and fast, oh my gosh, never leave a word by its own, because otherwise a line like, yeah, remember me, that's 1 speech balloon because it's 1 phrase, and you want there to be that kind of rhythmic pause between these 2 phrases. The other option would be for it to be this giant, super long line of text that like went all the way across, almost like a caption box, and that would look really goofy. So this is honestly a much better option. Don't sweat rules like that too much. They're suggestions. All right, so now we've got all of the lettering penciled in. So now our next step is to move on to inking it. So I also ink like I am living in the 19th century with a dip pen and a nib. And that is a Nico School nib, which is pretty nice. It's fairly sharp, but it's also nice and it's pretty stiff, which makes it nice for lettering because you don't want a lot of variation in your line when you're lettering with the nib. All right, so now we're going to go back over these letters, and you go fairly slowly. you don't have to worry about following every little stroke that you made with your pencil line, because I just kind of sketched it in there real quick. It's just to give you a guideline. But in general, when you letter, you want to make each stroke separately and pick up your pen in between each one. So top of the J, down, over, one side of the U, down, connect it. Top of the S, part of the S, bottom. Make little adjustments if it didn't come out quite right. So yeah, you do have to go fairly slowly. Sometimes I go back over if I don't feel that I got my lines quite where I wanted them. You go fairly slowly, but the end result looks so nice. Now I've kind of roughed in where I'm going to have screams. I'm going to do those at this stage as well. So I'm going to have to move this over a little bit because that A is right under those letters, and I actually want it to be kind of infringing on her word balloon, which is why I'm going to do that now ahead of the word balloons. I'm still using the same school nib because it's nice and stiff, and I don't really want a ton of variation or expressiveness in this line. I'm going to have to white out that panel border later. I'm going to give it a little bit of dimension. Doing a little drop shadow action here. So, next step, what I'm going to need is an ellipse template. I might possibly also need a French curve, but we'll get to that. A pencil again. And this time, instead of using a nib pen, I'm going to be using a felt tip pen. Fine point. These are the ones that I use. Primarily because not only do they work well, but you can find them absolutely everywhere. I have some art supplies that it's like I can only find certain places. Those things, any art supply, craft store, anything, you can find them in Walmart sometimes. Like, they're just everywhere, and that makes your life so much easier. So to make the word balloons, I'm going to take my lovely little ellipse template. These are all 45-degree, yeah, isometric ellipses. 45-degree ellipses. So I'm going to find one that is not too big and not too small, that it's like, we don't want it like so that you're bumping right up against the letters. I want to fill in the space and not leave a huge amount of space. I want to surround my letters, not leave a huge amount of space on the outside. Keep it looking nice and balanced. This is a little bit roomier, but I kind of like the way it fills up the space in between these characters rather than having the space super empty. So I do a quick ellipse in pencil, add my tail, and then I like to right away go back in and do that with my felt tip pen, because as you just saw, I forget which ellipse I used basically immediately. This I'm just going to freehand. Poorly. I'm going to freehand that poorly. Good job, me. Alright, let me try that again. Hey, there we go. That actually connected. Yeah, I'm going to have to white that out later. Good job. Alright. All right, this one I don't want to make quite so big, so you do want to always leave as much space as a letter between the letter and the edge. I mean, I fudge that a little bit sometimes. Sometimes it gets a little snugger than that, but you don't really want to make it that snug. I like to use the felt tip pen instead of a nib pen on that because nib pens and templates are a recipe for disaster. You are almost certainly going to end up with it leaking underneath everything and being a freaking mess. So this being a super long word balloon is not going to fit even my biggest circle. And even if it did, it'd end up super tall because it's long. So what I'm going to do here instead is I'm going to find a smaller ellipse, maybe even smaller than that, to just make the ends. I'm just going to go to that top notch right there that's marked on the template. Make either end. Try to keep them on the same level here. And for right now, I'm just going to kind of freehand that in. Figure out where the tail goes. It's going right there because he's speaking. Put that in. Again, just go to that top notch. I don't want to go any further because then I'm on the down slope of the ellipse, which is not what I want yet. Because I want a nice long top to this. I don't, however, want to use a straight edge because then it'll look goofy since everything is all rounded, nor do I want to freehand it because I will make a mess. So instead, I'm going to use a French curve. I have several of these. Basically how you use them is that you find the curve that you want to draw and you line it up somewhere on this that has many, many different curves and different angles, and a lot of them are asymmetrical. That's pretty handy. So for this, I want this kind of long, very open edge. I'm going to line up both of those tails. Kamaria's word balloon is going to end up kind of infringing on Balthazar's a little bit, but that's okay. There's still a nice clear delineation between them. So we left enough space there that it is pretty clear that this is one person speaking and this is a different person speaking. Although really, in hindsight, I maybe should have just given them a larger panel, but what are you going to do at this point? Literally nothing. And I'm going to stop my word balloon just shy of running into that letter because I do want it to look like that letter is interrupting what she's saying. So I want it to infringe on her word balloon a little bit. So that's my simple hand lettering tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed it and maybe learned something, and maybe you want to tackle hand lettering yourself sometime. I'm always willing to field questions and help give people pointers, so I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks.